All right. Actually, Tony, you want to take over from here?
Yep.
I can stop sharing.
All right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Great. So that's, I forgot to put your names in. Before I send out this presentation, I'll make sure that Brock and Melissa's names and contact are out there for you to connect with them, but that's Melissa, the other leader of the architects group. Here, I'm gonna go back a couple. So we're gonna talk about the summer 22 release. And the way that Bing and I talked about presenting this to you all is, if you've looked at the release, if you've looked at any release, there's so much content about what has changed, what's new, and there's a lot of information. What we'd like to narrow on is, how does this change your work as a developer, and what do you or should you care about with regard to the particular release? So we're going to cover all of the big topics from the release and highlight anything that either stands out or that you should particularly care about. We'll talk through a bunch of them, and then at the end, I have a little demo prepared for you for some of the stuff that I was pretty excited about. First topic on the list is Lightning components. The summer 22 update for Lightning components really just covers those three big areas: DOM manipulation, a couple of new features that are specifically tooled towards mobile developers, and then a lot about the developer experience. As far as DOM manipulation, the two big things is we have light DOM beta. So if you've worked with LWCs before, you know that the HTML is encapsulated within the shadow DOM. So you can now enable light DOM for your LWCs, which allows your third-party integrations to access elements directly instead of going through the shadow DOM, which is encapsulated. So the keyword there is encapsulation, and we'll see a demo of that in a bit. And then along the same lines of shadow DOM, along the same lines of light DOM, we have some updates to synthetic shadow and mixed shadow mode. The big thing here is, if you are developing for legacy systems, if you're developing for Internet Explorer, then you now have mixed shadow mode available, which helps you, it enables some of the polyfills that make things work for legacy systems. New and enhanced features, the big winner is mobile developers. So if you're a mobile developer, there's a couple of cool new things for you to use. First one is you can disable pull to refresh so that people aren't pulling their hair out after spending 5 minutes on a form and then swiping too fast. And the other one is there's now a library to access device contacts. So just import the library and you now have access to device contacts. I haven't used either of these. If anyone's a mobile developer, I'm very curious if you've done LWC mobile development and what those libraries look like when you import them. And then with the developer experience, the big highlights are Lightning Web Security, the distortion viewer, sorry. My cursor is going crazy, there we go. Safe time validation for Aura components and the UI test automation model. A couple that I wanted to highlight here. This relaxed safe time validation really just means that you're going to encounter fewer compilation and runtime JavaScript errors in your Aura components. And if those are errors that you care about, then you now need to go and enable those in your linting, or you need to handle those as you're doing your development, or enable them when during runtime. And then this UI test automation model is something I had never heard of before. If you haven't heard of it before either, what it essentially is, it's a testing framework that lets you document your UI pages as JSON, so that when Salesforce changes the DOM, instead of having to rewrite your test to account for the updated UI, you can just update that document that describes the UI, and your test now runs successfully. So it's a easy way, especially if you're documenting lots and lots of different pages, or if you're testing a large-scale JavaScript application, to not have all of your tests break the next time that Salesforce pushes a change that messes with the DOM. Because now all you need to do is identify that in your JSON, fix it, and your tests now run successfully. Next one is Einstein Vision, and the big winner here is OCR. So we have structured data extraction for custom forms and invoices. And what that essentially means is the Einstein OCR will analyze your document and pull the data out based on a custom form that you set up. So you set up a form, load in your documents, and the OCR can read those form values for forms and invoices specifically. Again, this is not something I have any experience with. So if you have experience using Einstein OCR, I'd love to hear a little bit about it and how you use it. And then Visualforce, some major updates to cross-origin security. Sure. Was there a question or an interruption? Okay, I see Melissa joined the chat. Hey, Melissa. Melissa, do you want to take a quick second to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Melissa Shepard. I live in Boston. I am the co-leader of the Boston Architect Community Group. I'm a CTA, and I do have a background in development.
That's short and sweet, like it. So Brock told us all about your event next week, and we're just getting into the summer 22 updates.
Oh, great. Just in time.
So Visualforce, big winner there is cross-origin security. You can now, the same content security policy that cuts across the rest of your org can now be enabled for Visualforce pages, and it's that little, it's just an attribute that you add to your Apex page header. Sorry. There we go. Some updates to cross-origin security policy, specifically with what can open a page, what can open one of your Visualforce pages, and what your Visualforce page can open, which is the embedder policy. So this cross-origin opener policy is an update such that you can enable the setting so that your Visualforce pages open in a separate browsing context. If you look at this little image here, what that means is pages in a different browsing context can no longer interact with yours. So a pop-up in a different browsing context can no longer interact with your Visualforce. You now have control and security over what other pages in an open browser can interact with yours. And then the embedder policy just means that you can set up security so that your Visualforce page can only open content material that the origin has allowed your Visualforce page to open. So say you have a protected image or you have some sort of protected documentation, you can surface that on your Visualforce page and enable security so that it's only visible if the origin has allowed it to be rendered. Yep. All right. Next up, some minor updates to APIs. We have a 401 we have a 401 error message for resources that have been removed. I think it's resources that have been removed or retired. I'm honestly not sure what the impact of this is. It could, what the impact and what the implementation is. So I don't know if this means that if you delete an API, when someone tries to access that page, it'll automatically show a 401, or if you now need to, or if you now just have a 401 page that you can show when the resource is missing. Aside from that, you can get metadata API notifications if you've retrieved the maximum number of deployable fields. So you're doing a massive migration, you're pulling in a bunch of metadata. The metadata API will now tell you when you've retrieved as many fields as can be deployed in one shot. You can still retrieve as many fields as you want, but the API now tells you this is the maximum number, or I think it's 90% of more or of what can be deployed in one shot so that you can manage your deployments. The analytics API now allows you to get PDFs from it. And finally, we have GraphQL API that is now in beta for summer 22. How much time do we have? Do we have time to get into this? We might. What's the difference between a REST API and a GraphQL API? With a REST API, you make a post request or a get request with a body, and the body just specifies what content you'd like and what content you're in your headers, what content you're allowed to access. With a GraphQL API, you make a post request with the schema of data that you'd like to access, and the API responds with data according to that schema. So you can now query across relationships. You can query across a number of different relationships. I dug into this a little bit, and all of the examples are things that you would typically just use a REST API for. But I imagine as this develops, there's going to be a lot of really powerful stuff that you can do, especially with metadata using the GraphQL API. I have this YouTube video linked. It's a fantastic demo by a guy named, let me find his name. I have his name credited in the, yeah, I have his name credited in the presentation. I'll find his name for you. And I don't want to go through the entire video, but I did just want to show you what it looks like to query using a schema and then to get back data according to the schema that you specified.
Hello everyone. Today we are going.
So don't worry if my audio isn't patching through. There's only a little snippet of this that I thought was relevant, and then the presentation will be available. So I skip over to 8:25. Oh, sorry. I skipped through the. There we go.
Hello, Audi.
All right, so just like with the REST API, you're in Postman, you're testing the API, you want to see what do I send, what comes back. I find the request, here we go. All right, in the request body, so in this demo, he is querying, the accounts API, the accounts GraphQL API. And what he's specifying here is it's a query of accounts where the format of the graph that he wants to return has edges and nodes that contain individual records with their ID and name. And so you can imagine here, if you have hierarchical accounts, then the edges will show those relationships between the individual accounts. So that's in contrast to your typical REST API query, this is what a GraphQL API query would look like. This is what the body, your request body would look like. And then when the response comes back, this is why I didn't want to play the whole video, because it takes 2 minutes to get from the query to the response. There we go. When the response comes back, it's not a list of records matching the criteria you specify. It's a graph that contains the information that you specified. In this case, a graph of accounts showing individual accounts as a node with those details. So that's in beta for summer 22. Plenty to play with there, I imagine. Next up is packaging. We have a new command, force package version report verbose. What that command allows you to do is see all of the Apex classes in a package that do not meet coverage. So when you're deploying a package, you need to provide 75% coverage for the entire package. This gives you clarity into which classes are not meeting coverage within the package, and then you can update those right from VS Code. And then custom permission set licenses. This I thought was a lot more interesting. It's essentially a way to break up your permissions, break up the features of an application using permission sets, and then apply different licensing to those permission sets. So whereas previously you could just subscribe to a managed package, now you can offer bronze, silver, gold tiers of that managed package, each coming with, and the only difference would be the permission set that's applied and the features that correspond to that permission set. I saw some interesting chatter about this enabling freemium managed packages. If this is of interest to anyone, if you have a managed package and you've been wondering, or you've worked around it to create a freemium version of it, then I'd love to hear if this is something of interest, or if you've already solved this problem and it's a feature that is too little too late. But yeah, custom permission set licenses that allow you to break up the features of your package into permission sets and assign licenses based on those permission sets. Finally, Salesforce functions, which is something else that was new to me. So a Salesforce function is just code to perform a specific task in any language that can access your org's data, but does not run within your org. It's not hosted on your org's infrastructure. The big question that came up for me as I looked at this update is, what is the difference between this and, say, a Heroku application, right? A Heroku application has just as much access to your Salesforce org, but it's also quote unquote independent or hosted separately from your org's infrastructure. So if anyone's used Salesforce functions or has a Heroku app and is interested in this, I'm also curious to hear really what the difference between a Salesforce function, which is code to execute a function written in any language, is. What's the difference between that and a Heroku application? Next up, an update for App Exchange partners. We now have app analytics that allow you to analyze the usage of external objects within your package. So you've deployed a package to a bunch of people, you want to do some analytics, you want to see, we implemented some external objects, to what extent are they being used within our application? Who was it? Mike, did you say that you work for Breadwinner?
Yes.
Yes, so I imagine you use some external objects for your accounting integrations. This might be something of interest for you there.
Yeah, I definitely need to look into that.
And then final update on my list is a couple of updates to the Change Data Capture API. So as you know, the Change Data Capture API works through PubSub. You publish, change happens, it gets published, and then you can subscribe to it through a variety of modes. An update to the publication aspect of it, you can now publish text area fields, just text area fields. So previously all you had was text fields. Now you have text and text area fields. However, you do not have long text area fields, rich or encrypted text area fields. So one step at a time, I guess. And then there's now change data capture available for a variety of other objects. The full list it's a really long list. I'll link it somewhere in the presentation. And then on the subscription side, I think there's a more interesting change. You can now filter the stream so that your program doesn't have to respond to every single change. You can now filter the stream. You can filter it at the stream level so that you're not taking in every change and then processing it. You're setting up your channel so that it filters the stream of events according to a particular criteria, and then your program can process those. So I think that will have a lot of efficiency gains if you've implemented a change data capture API, if you're subscribed to one and you're having volume issues, this is definitely worth a look. All right, Bing, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Tony.
Would you like to run them, or shall I just?
I can run them. I'll share mine. Okay. All right, let me start this slideshow here. So let me talk about two more things from the release notes, and one is the Apex section. Of course, Apex has been there forever as part of the toolbox for developers on Salesforce. So every release there are some new things coming up. And I would actually say this release is one of the less exciting ones in terms of Apex. Nothing too groundbreaking, a lot of the sort of incremental changes. I kind of view them, sort of falling into three categories: some security improvements, some goodies for developer productivity, and then there is some tweak in terms of overall system performance. So let's get into those. So for code security, there are basically two things. One is the sort of further option for control how your Apex code, it's a privilege, and you can now sort of have a more fine-grained control on how it behaves. And this is the user mode Apex code for its database operations. Apex code by default, they run in system mode. So it really has access to everything, regardless who's invoking the Apex code. But now you do have the option to kind of restrict the Apex database operations to user context, let it run in user mode. And with user mode keyword, the access to this query would have is limited by who is running this piece of Apex code. which of course you can tell that gives you more options in terms of making sure that you don't kind of allow access more than the user has, and you could still do that with there are some tooling in Apex that you can check users access, but this is a sort of overall level limiter, and which is more convenient to use.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So is this object level or field level? Do you know?
I think this is field level, but I wasn't too sure by kind of reading it, so that's something I can confirm.
I will look into it as well, because this is kind of like the with security enforced option, but like a little more granular.
Yeah. So right. Yeah. So I actually had that question as well, but I didn't really have the chance to truly sort of compare the details.
Okay.
Yeah, the release notes sometimes it has details in there. Sometimes you have to kind of dig into the underlying documentation. So my apologies, I haven't done that yet.
That's fine. I will look into it. I didn't know this existed, so thank you.
Yeah. So the second piece about code security here is now the overload for any Aura enabled method. Those controller Apex controller class for Lightning components. Overloads are now explicitly prohibited. In the past, it's a kind of undefined behavior. You could have overloaded methods, the methods with the same name. But because the way things are marshaled with Lightning component, the system really has no way to tell which one you're trying to call. So I think the default behavior is probably just get to the first method that matches, which may or may not be what you want, and sometimes it just actually cause problems. So now this is now prohibited on the compiler level. So if you want to create, you're trying to create a overloaded method, it would actually specifically tell you that this is not allowed. So this prevents some of those subtle issues with your code. The second part, developer productivity for Apex changed in this release. There are also two things. One is you can now actually call invocable actions from Apex. This is all in developer preview at this point, but definitely something worth looking into, because it creates a way to essentially reuse a lot of code, right? There are some standard invocable actions. The code example here is showing the standard chatter post action. And then you could also do your invocable Apex method to create custom actions, and then you could reuse those as well. In the past, those are once created, you use them through REST API, or use your flow builder. Now this allows you to kind of reuse those logic also directly in Apex as well. And the second item related to productivity is this whole external service registrations. And again, the external service registration, it was created, it's meant to be used with other platform tools and things like with Flow. But now if you register once, again, it's across, it can be used across Apex and other tools. Same purpose, allow the whole platform tool set to share a lot of things and really increase the efficiency when you're developing custom logic. The system performance items, also two of them. One is pretty obvious. Now you actually have a global scope when you're specifying Aura enabled. The cacheable equal true. I think a lot of you are probably pretty familiar by this point. This allows things to be managed by the platform and including Lightning Data Service that gives you performance boost because the caching behavior with your Lightning component with scope equal global here. It also allows the method to be in cache with a global caching mechanism such as Salesforce CDN. So this is particularly important if you have your user base, kind of spread across the globe. For instance, you have an EU instance and people need to use it from Australia. A good support across for CDN would have benefit for that. One thing I want to point out here is the syntax for the sample code there, the scope equal to global, that actually needs to be between apostrophes. Initially, I was doing this because this is what in the documentation, it says scope equal global directly. That actually doesn't work. The compiler would say, I don't recognize this. The correct syntax is actually should be should have apostrophe around it. I just haven't changed my slide there. And the other item, it wasn't actually very clear in the release note. It just says, now you have fairer resource allocation when running Apex tests. And it says, in the past, there are some of the allocations for some of the tests that requires multiple sort of jobs or something like that. And the fair allocation of resources is not guaranteed and sometimes cause bottleneck. So now they're likely to run faster because it's better distributed. It did not say anything at all why it's more fair and how the mechanism works. So you just kind of have to take their words for it. Hopefully that is the case. So that's Apex. And anyone has any question about this before I move on? All right, if not, then there's okay. There's some additional notes in chat if folks haven't noticed. Thank you, Brock and others about some of the items here, especially that user mode stuff. Thank you. All right, so let me move on to the next part. So I'd like to talk about event-driven architecture. This actually covers a number of things in the release notes, including something Tony already touched upon, the change data capture. I view all of those as event-driven architecture, especially in the integration context. And this is a big part of the capability of the platform. It's very useful for a lot of the common use cases for integration. So this release is actually very exciting in terms of the increased capabilities. So let me cover those. And the changes in this release, I kind of view them as a sort of evolution versus revolution. Some of the things, again, are incremental, very interesting, but doesn't really change the paradigm. But there are some new things that very much change or add to the capabilities of the platform. So the improvements to current architecture, those the incremental changes that includes the ability to group events into one stream using a custom channel. At this point, the custom channels can only be created by metadata or tooling API. So it's a little less convenient, but still very good first step to make that happen. And then you can filter your stream of events with those custom channels. You can define custom channels, but also just have very fine-grained control over what events go through those channels. It's really about efficiency, and I'll talk about it more in the next slide. You also have the ability now to get the actual result for asynchronous publishing, in addition to just knowing the queuing. This is something Tony already said, additional field type support in those CDC events, and then additional objects for change data capture. The new thing, the really revolutionary thing for event-driven architecture for Salesforce is really the introduction of PubSub API based on gRPC. This is now GA. It's been in pilot and beta for a while, and now fully available for everyone. And I'll talk a little more about what that is and why this is important in the next few slides. And there's also an interesting addition in terms of make Salesforce work better with additional clouds. And this event bus relay would make connecting Salesforce event bus with Amazon Event Bridge, which is a service that manage additional event services in AWS. Make it much more seamless or smooth to get that set up and get that up and running, which is important in a lot of large enterprises and the solutions, because Salesforce certainly not the only player, and a lot of times you would have the need to have the clouds work together. So let's talk a little more, details about the improvements to the current architecture. The grouping events into stream and using, some of the newly introduced metadata types, which is platform event channel and platform event channel member. The reason this is important is, if you think about streaming API or anything that, go across streaming API, like change data capture, it's all committee based if you look at it from a client perspective. So in the past, it's really you define an event or define a push topic or define an object CDC. It will just, the events will start flowing, and anything that met the event definition, they would flow and reach the subscribers. And sometimes that's not very efficient. There's a lot of changes in your data. You end up with 1 million events delivered to your committee. That is sometimes problematic for two reasons. One is, your clients might be overwhelmed. There are just a lot of things to process. A lot of them might not even be relevant. The second is really just kind of money, right? So because for external integrations, the usage is metered by delivered events. So, one event deliver that counts against your quota for the day or for the hour. And streaming API doesn't have very high limit, actually. The entitlement for push topic is 1 million a day, and for an unlimited addition. And then for I think for a platform event, that's 250,000. So it's a big number, but in a busy environment, it's not that much. And if a lot of them are consumed by sort of not so relevant event, that's not very fun to use. So now you actually have some filtering capabilities through this new metadata types. You can group all of them into a single channel and filter them, which is the kind of second part of the change is filtering them. Then your channel for these events are much more efficient, and both in the sense of you can control how much you need to process, as well as how much quota you're using for the day. And the filter, it's really just defined in that channel member filter expression field. And this is beta for platform events channels, and it's a pilot for CDC, and you can start playing with it if this is relevant for your purpose, and GA should be coming usually for this kind of change in a couple of releases you would have in GA. So very good development. And additional improvements, I mentioned that now you can actually get the result of it, asynchronous publishing. So if you recall the immediate publishing kind of event, when you do that, what the result you get back is really the queue, whether the queuing was successful or not. Whether your code was able to actually queue the event. Whether the event actually gets published, sometimes maybe it's stopped by a limit or for whatever reason it's now published, you have no way of knowing. But now there is actually a way to get that result back through this sort of asynchronous publishing result. So now your process is more robust because you know the queuing result. If something failed, you can do something about it. But also, if you know your publishing failed, then you could actually, through a callback mechanism, you can do something about it. Either let someone know by messaging or try to requeue some things if that's possible. So it gives you more possibilities. Text area support is certainly great for CDC event definition. Again, it doesn't cover long, rich, or encrypted fields, only the plain sort of smaller text area fields. Additional objects for CDC, definitely a lot of those. I was actually able to fit all of them in here. If anyone cares to read all of those. This is in addition to a lot of the existing, major object. It's already covering, I think, all custom objects, and now it adds to a lot of the sort of smaller, lesser used standard objects as well. So the last thing, but certainly not the least, the change is this new pops up API. This is essentially a new kind of event bus, and it is really sort of built from scratch and to kind of support a new way of interacting with Salesforce platform. This is gRPC based. I think that stands for Google Remote Procedure Call. And it's all HTTP2. And with those two things, gRPC has been around for a long time, since when they first developed by Google, and has been really optimized to be highly efficient and scalable. I wouldn't be able to get into why it does a lot of things better with gRPC and HTTP2, but one thing that immediately clear for a lot of use cases and people sort of do things with streaming API on Salesforce is streaming API and CDC and all those things leveraging streaming API. They are unidirectional. So you publish the event and you kind of subscribe to the event channel and get the updates. But if you want to push, you want to publish something back to the same event balance, same kind of event, you're going to need something else, right? You have a REST resource that you can publish events. But those are two separate things, right? You use Comet D client to receive things and publish through a different sort of REST API stuff. PubSub API is fully bidirectional. So it's the same client and server pieces that allows you to both subscribe to things and also send in your own event to the same channel, which is really convenient once you have that in place compared to the old structure. And community support is pretty good in languages, but a lot of times it's sort of almost community support. And PubSub gRPC is officially supported in 11 languages with sort of well-maintained client libraries. So again, that's very nice to use for your production deployment. And you do get instant publishing result, and it is also enabled on existing event channel structure. So once you define an event channel, the events can flow through existing structure, but they are also reachable through PubSub API. So again, a good bridge between what we have now and in the future, and it's really scalable performance. Streaming API, in the end, there's some difficulty to truly scale it. You can tell by the entitlement you have, it's a relatively low number. PubSub API doesn't suffer from platform limitations. I don't know, I haven't really looked into how Salesforce is going to charge for it, but in terms of technology, it really has no important limit. It can go as high as the platform and your needs would need to go. So all these things combined, this makes a extremely compelling case to kind of start looking into this new event bus and sort of get familiar with it. And it is quite different. It kind of use different protocol. It even use a different kind of serialization. It does support JSON, but by default, it's use protocol buffer, which is a different kind of serialization. So new things to get used to, but definitely worth some effort to look into. And briefly, the event bus relay. This is a kind of nice diagram of how it all links together. Event bus relay. There are good documentation from both Salesforce side. I have some links here as well as AWS. Yeah, EventBridge. You can look it up and see how to set it up, and mostly by click. And then the importance here. Again, when you have an event that comes out of Salesforce event bus, because of some of the limitations with the event bus, a lot of times it's more economical or convenient to actually pipe that into EventBridge, so you can get to additional things like simple notification service or a queuing service in AWS that reaches a whole lot more audiences than Salesforce event bus alone can do. And you could also from EventBridge to invoke Lambda service from AWS. The possibilities are endless if you can make this bridge happen very easily, which is Salesforce is trying to do with Event Bus. I think that's it. And Tony, I'll pass back to you for your demo.
All right. I have a question about the PubSub API that I want to hold to the end, but when you say bidirectional streaming, does that mean that I can respond to a platform event, or does it just mean I can send messages over the same channel? But don't answer.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
All right. So that's everything as far as the summer 22 release. Those are all of our updates and what we think that you should care about. Obviously, the document is up, and we'll share our notes and things. What I have for you for the next, hopefully 20 minutes, is a quick demo of a couple of things. Let me share my screen. And present. There we go. There we go. Demo of a couple of things that I thought were interesting to mix it up a little. I want to demo for you a workflow using some of the new tools, the Apex, the code builder, which is now in beta, and the DevOps Center. And we're going to develop using a couple of the new Lightning component features that are available. Hopefully this gives you a sense of how you can implement some of those new tools into your workflow. This demo is a little bit ambitious. So this is what I have set up as an agenda. We'll see how much of it we can get through. And if things start to get out of scope or take too long, then I might trim it down as needed. But essentially what I'd like to do is use the DevOps Center to set up 2 new work items, and you'll see what those are. And we'll review the DevOps pipeline. And then for the first work item, we're going to set up a Lightning Web Component that uses some of the new features, push it to a Scratch org and demonstrate it, commit that to Git, and then review and promote it through the DevOps Center. For the second work item, we'll again do that, write that code using the code builder, and push that to a Scratch org, and we'll pull the meta from the Scratch org into the DevOps center and then continue the pipeline through there. So we'll have one pipeline coming through Git, the other pipeline coming through a Scratch org, all of it being pulled through the DevOps center, and we can show the final result in our production org. So I've run this a couple of times, fingers crossed. Let's see how well it goes. I think the first thing I'd like to show is the final result. So at the end of the day, what I hope we can show is in my dev org, which is going to be our production environment, I'd like to show you a Lightning Web component that displays. So this Lightning Web component is it's rendered in light mode. And the feature that we're going to look at is event bubbling. So if you write your LWCs in light mode, then because it's within the native DOM, you can reach down, events propagate across natively. I'm not using the right words, but it'll make sense when you see it. And an event will propagate from this, which is 3 levels down, up to the parent, and then up to its parent component, up to the grandparent component, and we'll see a toast notification. So if I click on this button, an event will be launched, and maybe it's worth looking at the code real quick so we don't have to look too deeply at it. I have 3 components here. I have a child component, a container component, both of which are in light mode. And then I have my application component, which is in native Shadow DOM. So you can see my container is rendered in light mode. My child component is also rendered in light mode. What that means is that when I click this button, that on-click event is going to propagate up through the parent and then up into the grandparent, and I'll be able to handle it natively. If this light container is in shadow mode, then the event will not propagate across that boundary. I would have to repropagate. I would have to refire the event, dispatch the event afresh from the parent component for it to be listened 1 level up. So with light mode enabled, when I click my button, I get a notification from the parent component, and then I get this, which is coming from the application component, child parent application. Yes, I get this, which is coming from the application component. That's actually wrong. What I want to see is another toast event. So very quickly, you can see here, what we saw was the lightning alert, which is another one of the new features. What I want to see is another toast event. So I'm going to very quickly deploy this. And what we'll see is a toast event from the container, the parent, and then a toast event from the application component. Give this guy a hard reload. And then what we'll do is turn light mode off on the parent component, the container, and see that the event no longer propagates across that boundary. All right, so I click on this guy. I get a toast event from the container and a toast event from the application component. If I turn off light mode on the container, the event no longer propagates, and I only get that 1 notification from the parent. So if I come over to my container, turn off light mode, and in my JS, make sure that the render mode is done away with, and deploy that. Give this guy a hard refresh. Then because the application component is in shadow mode, that event doesn't cross the boundary between the container and the application component. So you set this up as a task, or you set this up as a need. How do we push it through a pipeline using the new DevOps Center? Like I said, first thing, let's look at the DevOps Center, see what that's all about. Yes, here we go. DevOps Center, pretty simple. You have your work items. You push your work items through your pipeline, and then you use your settings to add all of the different environments that encompass your pipeline. One thing that I wanted to mention with the DevOps Center, obviously it's in beta, it's gonna evolve and change. To me, what its primary, the value proposition here seems to be to allow your Salesforce people to be DevOps people without forcing them to learn GitHub. So continuing to work within Salesforce and to work in a Salesforce-oriented way, you can have your Salesforce team embrace DevOps and have work items that get pushed through a pipeline, that get staged, that get bundled, that ultimately make it to production. Whereas before, if you wanted to have that kind of control over your environment and changes, your DevOps people would have to learn GitHub. So we have a couple of environments here, 2 development environments, a release environment, a staging environment that is a playground, and then a release environment that is now my dev org. We have a pipeline set up where, give that thing a second. Yes, we have a pipeline set up where work gets approved, goes through to our staging environment, and ultimately goes to production. What you'll see here is what the value that the DevOps Center is providing is when you promote something from one environment to another, you're A, deploying it, and B, merging the feature branch into your major branch. So you'll see, when we set up a work item, you'll see that when I promote something, I deploy it to my next environment and I merge that feature branch into the main branch or the staging branch so that now my branches and my environments are aligned. And work items. And a work item is just, it's what starts your workflow, and every work item becomes a feature branch in your GitHub. So what did I say I was going to do? Work item 1, create an LWC, showcase it in the Scratch org, commit it to Git, and then review and promote it through the DevOps Center. Sorry. And Bing, would you help me keep an eye on time if we're going over, then just let me know and I'll summarize things.
Right. Yeah, I think we're good if we can wrap up at around maybe 8:30, or we should be okay.
Yeah, I should be able to hit that. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my sandbox environment. Which one did I want to use for this? I want to use this guy, Summer 22. To my Scratch org. I'm going to start working on this like DOM test. This work item does not have a development environment connected. So the only way that I can get changes into this development, the only way I can make changes for this work item is to deploy them to the relevant branch. So you'll see here in my VS Code, I've already cloned, I've cloned the repo that was created. Every time you set up a pipeline, every time you set up a pipeline, you get a repo. And I've already cloned that repo and signed into the feature branch that was created as a result of that work item. So you can see the work item is work item 1, which created a feature branch, which I'm now checked out into. So now I can do my work. I'm just going to copy this, make my life pretty easy. Yeah, I'm just going to copy all of these guys because we've already looked at the code. And stop me at any point if there's something you'd like me to pay a little bit more attention to. So I'm just going to add those to my repo. And then the first thing I'm going to do is push them to my Scratch org and take a look and confirm that my new application works. So I'm already, so here I just need to do an sfdx force source push to my Scratch org. Now at this stage, all I'm doing is development. In order to deploy, in order to kick off the pipeline, I need to commit to Git because again, this work item is not linked to a development environment, and we'll see the alternative later. Get into that Scratch org, take a look at my component. And actually, I'm going to make a quick change just for, yes. So the other feature of the Lightning component section that I wanted to demo is Lightning actions or Lightning APIs. Salesforce is surfacing a number of APIs to replace the window.javascript API. And the reasoning there is at some point, because of security or because of your own development model, you may not be able to use the window.javascript APIs. And so Salesforce is providing primarily notification and pop-up APIs to replicate that function for you. So if I get rid of this guy and replace him with this, oops. There we go. So rather than showing a toast event, I'm going to use the lightning alert.open to show a pop-up. And then in order to enable this, I need to make sure that my container application is in light mode. Otherwise, the event won't propagate. And push. Right. This thing not, I don't think it recognized the changes I made to this. Oh, the environments might be a little bit out of alignment. I'm sure everything's in shape. So let's go over to the Scratch org, take a look at the feature, and then commit it to Git and kick off the pipeline. Just going to quickly add that component to my homepage. Activate for all users. This is a side note, but if anyone has a really good flow for seeding Scratch orgs with sample data, then I definitely need to talk to you because that is the bane of my life right now. All right, feature developed. Let's test it. Looks good. I didn't get my window notification, so I need to confirm that this is all straight. Yep, render in light mode. And oh, yeah, we need this light container, HTML. There we go. And light container JS. There we go. And light on test. Oh, that's fine. That's good. Good. So push again and then take a quick look at that. Good. Back to my Scratch org. Hard reload. And great. So we have the toast notification from the container component, and then the page application from the parent. Great. So now, in order to commit this and kick off my pipeline, I go back to VS Code, and now I want to commit this change to Git. So Git add everything. Check what I just added. And then commit that. That's committed. If I go back and take a look at Git, then I have a new commit to my feature branch. But again, the goal here is for your Salesforce people to be DevOps people without having to look at GitHub. So when I go to my DevOps center, I can now yes, when I look at work item 1, what the DevOps Center is pulling my work out of GitHub and facilitating it as metadata that I can commit. So ask for that to be reviewed. The reviewer is going to need to go to GitHub in order to review the code. Or they're going to, because this change was made outside of a development environment, the reviewer is going to need to go to GitHub in order to review. But once they've reviewed, then they can give the word however they can. either they can merge that pull request. Yes, so we have a new pull request from, yes, a new pull request, which is my work is in review, please take a look and merge it into staging. I can either merge it into staging, or I can confirm that it is ready to promote and then promote it. And now that it's ready to promote, I can go and promote that through my pipeline. So this is the cool part, or this is the valuable part, where when I promote a piece of work, I am, you'll see in a moment, I'm merging that pull request, and I am deploying this metadata to my staging environment. So that's fine. Let's see it do some work. And then we'll switch, do it using a development environment, and then complete the pipeline. All right, so that is now pushed to Git, and it's available in my staging environment. If I go back to Git, then I see that we had a push to staging. I should see. Why is that still open? Oh yes, and now the open pull request is now to merge staging into production. So my pull request to merge into staging is now closed. Great. So what flip side and new tool, Code Builder. I want to execute on a second work item using a development environment, and this is where your admins come in. So on this second work item, I want to work using a developer environment. Auto sync with the latest source. Yeah, that's fine. So sync this guy. So now I'm synchronizing. I'm SFDX force pull and push to get the latest metadata into my development environment. I didn't even know this. I didn't know that was a thing. That's pretty cool. Because now I don't manually have to go in and synchronize my Scratch org before I start work.
Yeah, I think DevOps Center is pretty polished for the basics.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
They got the bones right. They got the bones really right.
Yeah.
Yes, I would be interested to know how they do the merge conflicts. How do they resolve? And we have a lot of people, in the team. That seems to be quite challenging for us. We are using Peerset, but I would really love to see how they do it. But this is awesome. This is really nice. I love this, Tony. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I deliberately avoided any merge conflicts as I was setting it up. If we finish on time, maybe we can force a merge conflict.
There you go.
Hopefully, it's as simple as fixing it in Git and then merging the branch.
Right. Cool.
She caught me. I was hoping nobody would notice, but all right. So now I can use my dev1 environment. We have a new feature branch to work off of, and I have a dev environment to work off of. I'm not going to work in my dev environment since I'm doing LWC. What I will do is switch over to my code builder. The code builder is really just, it's the same interface as VS Code with your Salesforce extension tools. It's just that on the cloud. I'm not fully sold on this. It's good, but I'm not fully sold on it. There's a reason why you run VS Code on your desktop. So what do I need to do? I'm gonna pull the meta from my Scratch org, my dev1 environment, into this project. I'm gonna make a change and push that back to my Scratch org, and then I'm going to use my Scratch org to kick off the dev pipeline. So what I want to do is go to my org browser, refresh it. What am I signed into? I just want to make sure I'm authorized to the right dev environment. Give me a sec here. Dev1 customer page. Okay, good. authorize sandbox dev1. Oh, this is a different, not me. There we go. I want to be signed into here. There we go. That's the wrong org. Yes, there we go. And then authorize to my dev1 customer page, good. Allow, good. Back to my code builder. I can now refresh this. Refresh that, whoops. Okay, good, so now I have all of my LWCs, pull them into my project. I'm not sure what is happening here. Cancel that. Here, I'm going to cancel all of that. Start this over again. Pull that into my project. Yep. And if that takes too long, then I'm just going to do a force source push, source pull. That's good. If I source pull, then it should give me exactly what I need. SFDX force source pull. So this I can only do because I'm developing against a scratch org, so I can pull the source. There we go. Much simpler. All right, I have all of my LWCs in my project. Now I want to make a change, push it back to my scratch org, and use the scratch org to kick off my pipeline. So we're going to go back over here. Actually, we're going to set it back to shadow mode. Very good. Push. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because it doesn't matter where you do your development. What matters is what you use to kick off your pipeline. Are you using Git to kick off your pipeline, or are you using a development environment to kick off your pipeline? And in this case, dev environment specifically means an environment that has source tracking enabled. All right, come on. There we go. Oh dear. I was trying to push a bunch of stuff that it does not need to. Oh, I have some pages that I've pulled from another environment. Pages.
Those look like community visual force pages.
Oh, get rid of this. Here, I'm going to make my life a little bit simpler and just deploy. Yeah. good. So we've deployed the source back to our Scratch org. Now I can use the DevOps Center to kick off that pipeline. And we won't take that through to the end just because of time, but at least you'll have seen what it looks like to kick off a pipeline from Git and what it looks like to kick off a pipeline from a dev org. So pull the changes. Now I'm pulling them from the Scratch org into the Dev Center workflow. And it shows me the files that I have. Select all of them, make a commit message. Light DOM demo from Scratch and commit. So this is really useful if you're working on a project that involves both developers and admins, because now you have a way to closely integrate them with your development pipeline. All you need to do for them is spin up a Scratch org, and your DevOps team can handle the rest. Rather, all you need to do for them is set up a work item, connect that work item to a development environment, and then hand that development environment to your admins, and they can now do whatever they need to do, and you can put that through the same pipeline that the rest of your work goes through.
Awesome.
All right, so once that's ready, commit is complete. I'm just going to create a review. And you'll see the same thing in GitHub. Push to that branch and an open pull request. It should be an open pull request. And an open pull request. And your pipeline manager can now push the work through the pipeline. So Tripura, what's going to happen when you have a merge conflict? I don't know at this moment in time, but maybe that becomes the topic for the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any questions that I can answer real quick about the process that we went through? Here, let me go back.
So code builder, you just access that from the org, is it?
So the code builder is an app exchange application. Do you need to do anything before you enable it? No, all you need to do for the code builder is download the application and install it on your, not download, is install the app exchange package in your dev environment or in your dev hub.
Okay.
For the DevOps console, for the DevOps Center, you need to go into setup, enable DevOps, and then install the package. And the package link is right there.
Okay, and then the DevOps Center, do you enable it in production or you enable it in all your orgs?
You would enable it in your product. I think you can enable it anywhere. You should enable it in ideally in your Dev Hub environment, because what you do from your DevOps Center is link all of the environments that are part of your pipeline.
Okay. Good, very good. This is wonderful, Tony. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
I like it. Yes, if you go to under setup, you'll see Dev Hub, and you have a little button to click, and then a package to install, or rather DevOps.
There you go. Yeah.
Enable DevOps and install the package. And then there's one other thing. You need to install the package, and then you need to do some managing permissions, but it's all right there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Has anybody used DevOps Center? I know there was one person who was using GearSet. I just want to compare, how DevOps Center works with GearSet. Because I really seem to like this. DevOps Center seems to be, more of UI, and developers can actually see what's happening rather than having a separate, dedicated, release manager who can work on these deployments. I really like this, but I would just like to know, if comparing this with GearSet.
Yeah, I really don't know anyone who's using this in production, but there is a DevOps Center group which is very active. You can join that and talk to people. I view this as, I think Tony said that as well, is it's kind of very light touch, sort of integrated pipeline management. This is not meant to be a tool for a dedicated release manager or DevOps engineer. So it's not, I think the premise for the tool is different from things like a Copado or GearSet. Yeah, it's very suitable for team members who need to be integrated into the CI pipeline without knowing too much about GitHub. If you want to manage sort of the core tasks related to your source control and CI pipeline, this is not your tool.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Tripura, I'm going to link a video here. So as I was looking everything up, there's an excellent demo from a guy named Pradeep. Yes, Pradeep Konakanchi, that dives, so he goes into everything, and I think he might go through a merge conflict. Okay. The other one is Elements has a video about how to use Elements with the DevOps Center and the integrations between there. So if you're interested in that side, that might be a good one.
Sure, thank you.
All right. Bing, I don't know how much time we have or how long people want to stay. I had a couple of audience questions, which is really just if anything that we covered in the release is relevant to you and you can talk about it, then tell us some stories or tell us what's interesting and what you're looking forward to use.
Yeah, I would definitely try that user mode in the Apex. I want to see how that works because today we are writing extra code to check, that the schema field, whatever the security that we are checking at the subject level that I'm using. But probably I'll definitely use the user mode and the other light mode that you showed to me. I really like that. So we will start using those. And of course the CDC channel, platform channel. I really like it.
User mode might make a very big difference, especially if you're developing a managed package and you need to keep close track of all of the permissions. Right. That might give people a lot of headache. Right.
Yep. And you also told me about that package version on the managed package, the report verbose, where you are getting uncovered. Yes, I will use that. Very helpful.
So actually, if we have a second, one thing I didn't cover is, if we have a second, about packaging. The DevOps Center, when you're in the DevOps Center, I have it open somewhere. There we go. You can choose one of your environments where you bundle. So you bring all of your work items together. At that stage, you can assign a version. So I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that what this is doing behind the scenes is creating a package. And so Tripura, if you're using this to create a managed package, then once you've created that package version, you can run the report on it and see what needs work. I don't know for sure, but I assume that's what it's doing behind the scenes, creating a package version.
I mean, that can be done only from the VS Code as of today. Creating a package version, we don't have any UI form of supporting it. There's no way to do it, but I can definitely check that. If it's really doing the package version, or if it's more of a unpackaged version. I can definitely look at that. Yeah. But thanks for that.
Yeah, now you've set me down a rabbit hole. Now I'm sure.
Yeah, I would definitely love to hear anyone who get a chance to try the PubSub API.
Oh yes,
I think it holds a lot of promise. I haven't got a chance to actually try it because it really kind of requires some setup, but not the least that I want to do it with the custom channel, and those are I have to kind of handcraft tooling API requests. So it needs a little work, but it'd be very interesting to make it work and see how it performs.
Chris, Ken, Dimo, anything that stood out that you want to highlight or questions that you had?
Do you happen to know if the DevOps Center works with Bitbucket as well as GitHub?
It's an excellent question. I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
Right. GitHub only for now.
I had the same. The similar CA doesn't support Bitbucket. So likewise, I guess.
Right.
I will have the same problem. Yeah.
That might be the number one asked questions in that group.
Oh.
Is when
Really?
are you gonna have get bit? Yeah.
How much are functions being used these days? Do you have any sense?
Salesforce functions.
Yeah, I mean, is it just too new to at this point? Or?
Well, preparing the presentation is the first time that I had heard of them. Are
Mhm.
you familiar? Do you have any examples or use cases that you've encountered?
Oh, are you talking to Bing?
No, yeah, it doesn't matter. I was just gonna say, I haven't met anyone who's using that in a sort of production context. And also, I'm still unclear. Well, I can probably find out. I never sort of made the effort to find out what the pricing is like
Mhm.
to use Salesforce functions. I imagine it's probably going to be sort of a little more expensive than things like Lambda. But the compelling point here is really it's super convenient. There's nothing to get out of Salesforce. You don't have to set up authentication, no context marshaling. It's just everything you want to invoke is almost right there. It just makes using this kind of computing function much more productive. So I think that's its main selling point. Otherwise, people would say, I have Heroku, I already have AWS Lambda. Why do I need that? It's just, anything you want to process directly in sales, it almost like directly in Salesforce. It's not. It's actually off platform, but it's, they made it just seamless. So, it feels like you're using something within Apex, but it's actually not.
But in reality, what? It's a container somewhere.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, I asked someone who I think has pretty reliable information. They said, yeah, they just internally they have a kind of infrastructure that kicks off a container.
Mhm.
Or otherwise, typically, do they go for Meetup API or tooling API or web services? Was that the original solution then before the Salesforce functions came?
You're talking about the event.
I
chat?
don't know, the Salesforce functions. If we do not have Salesforce functions, we would resort to those techniques, right? Web services, tooling API or metadata API, Java is talking to Salesforce, right? But this is kind of totally avoiding all of this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There's no API involved. The whole transaction is you kind of within. Well, it kind of depends on. Well, actually, it doesn't matter what kind of things you invoke, whether it's written in Node.js or Java. The process is the same. So yeah, it's no external authentication. There's no API.
Yep.
Chris, I just saw your direct message about seeding sandboxes and scratch.orgs. That's the most important headache that I can solve right now. Because if I can do that, then it's the beginning of all of the problems with DevOps. It's just that at the end of the day, people can't work seamlessly together. Then it doesn't matter how much other effort you put into a clean pipeline.
Yeah, I think Chris has dropped out, but I think his reference to the net presentation is very useful.
I started looking at that, and it does look interesting because I completely agree with you, Tony. It's like if we could crack getting seeded data into sandboxes, it would just really open up a lot. But I don't know if our data is just more complicated than other people, or it's such a daunting task to be like, I'll take a year off and create scratch data.
Yeah, Snowflake has been around for a little while. It's a fully open source, and if you kind of find something you want to contribute and to make it better, I actually know some of the people there if you want to be a part of it. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Is Snowfakery independent of Salesforce, or is it designed for Salesforce specifically?
It's specifically for Salesforce, I believe, but it's not part of Salesforce. It's a
Right. I understand. It's an
Yeah.
open source project.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was platform independent. I haven't heard of it, so I don't know much about it, obviously. I'll take a look.
cool. Yeah, I forgot to announce something before. Now we only have 5 people, but there is a so that session Chris referenced, that's from Ned, and Ned is really kind of going through a change. We need a new team that's going to run the conference in the future. So there is we had an informational session, and on September 2nd there is a meeting for everyone who might be interested in contributing or be part of the leadership team. There's a meeting there, so if anyone who's is interested in knowing more about it or possibly to serve on the committee, and let me know. I can forward you the information and just kind of join a call and see if there's an opportunity. And yeah, and tell people that who might be interested as well.
I'll write that down. It's definitely something I'd like to look into.
Cool.
Super. Were you able to join the Boston Salesforce Slack group after the last user group meeting?
Not really. I should do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once.
Yeah, we can. That's the best way to, if you have a way to send me a message and just send me your email and
Okay.
I can send an invite.
Okay. Sure.
Is it the same channel that we've used in the past?
Yeah.
Okay, nothing has changed. All right.
Yeah, same Slack channel. All right, cool. I think this is it. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. This is
Thank you very much.
yeah, awesome. A lot of
Yeah.
goodies from the release.
Thank you, both of you.
Very insightful. Yep. Now just
Awesome
reading the
presentation.
document, you really got to see a lot of things. And,
Thank you.
and I'm sure, this will really make a lot of difference in the
Yeah.
next sprint at work. Thank you, both of you, and thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks
If
for coming.
any
We're
of you,
looking for
get to do
volunteers
some cool
for-
stuff with let's share with the group.
We're looking for volunteers for winter 23. Is it winter 22 or winter 23? 2023.
Sorry.
So looking for volunteers for the same thing for winter 23. So keep an eye out for that on Slack. And it's really simple. It's just going through the documents and figuring out what people should care about and then distilling that for them. So hopefully it becomes something that we can get into a rhythm of very easily.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank
Great.
you again.
everyone.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.